Hey guys, back with another review. Fire Emblem Birthright. Yeah, I've finished it already. I just blazed through this game. It took me far shorter than I expected to finish this game. It took me a little under 22 hours, which is like almost 10 hours shorter than Conquest. And I think the reason for that is the fact that I played on casual normal mode, and Birthright is a much easier game than Conquest. So this review is going to be pretty short. I'm not going to cover a lot of the stuff I did in Conquest. If you want like a full review of the actual gameplay, refer to my Conquest review. I'm just going to be talking about some of the differences and whether or not I enjoyed Birthright or Conquest more. Some people are going to obviously prefer one over the other. Now, there's still a third part that hasn't come out yet at the time of this recording, Revelations. It's like a downloadable only, unless you got the special edition, the Fire Emblem Special Edition. I'm going to wait to play that because I've now played Fire Emblem Awakening, Conquest, and Birthright all pretty much back to back. So I'm kind of burnt out on Fire Emblem at the moment. Towards the end of Birthright, I was starting to kind of feel the burnout a little bit, and I think it would be better to hold off on that game and play it in a few months from now, so I can fully enjoy it. Because yeah, I think not quite in the mood for a strategy for another Fire Emblem game at the moment. But Birthright, this is the one that most people actually have probably started with. It's the less hardcore, I guess, of the two games. We'll talk about story first, where, like I said in the Conquest review, you choose a side, you choose a family that you side with at the end of Chapter 6, and then from there the two games differ. And the story in Birthright compared to Conquest is actually much simpler. But you know, I've read online that a lot of people found that Birthright has better writing and a better story in general, and I would agree with that. But I actually think it's more dull here. I actually think the story in this game is incredibly boring, and it's quite simplistic. Basically, the story, you side with the Hoshido family, and you invade the Kingdom of Nor and try to take down King Garen. That's the plot. I mean, you get some backstory for some of the characters that you wouldn't get in Conquest, and you figure out some character motivations that are a little different. But generally, you're just basically meeting a new cast of characters and getting to know them, and then invading and eventually trying to stop King Garen. Conquest, you got to actually understand Garen a little better as a character. Not quite. He's still over the top evil, but there is a reason for that. But this game, they don't delve into that because obviously, you as Corrin, you're not having any interactions with the king or any of the villain characters. So that kind of made Conquest a little more interesting to me. There was a lot of contrivances in the story in Conquest and a lot of stupid bullshit, but it was entertaining. I thought it was very entertaining. And the story here, it's boring, and when it's not boring, it's cheesy. There's like a bunch of cheesy dialogue in this game. Some of the cutscenes I just was like facepalm. Like it was just like cringeworthy stuff. Some of the lines of dialogue, which I found like Awakening wasn't like that. But that different localization team for that game, 8-4 Play did Awakening, and the Nintendo Treehouse did the Fire Emblem Fates. And I think 8-4 is a little better, I think, at localization. So yeah, the story, I don't know, it's boring. I just kind of find it boring and simplistic. I didn't care for it too much, actually, in Birthright, surprisingly enough. The cast of characters are good. I like the characters, but I actually prefer the characters on the noir side. I think they're a little more interesting and varied there. The characters are a little more boring in Birthright as well. So yeah, I'd say Birthright is better written. It probably has a better story. There's less contrivances and less stupid bullshit, but it's nowhere near as entertaining. So it was a little bit disappointing, actually. Luckily, the gameplay is still as great as ever. That core Fire Emblem gameplay. The main differences are basically the mission objectives and what you can do between missions. In Birthright, you basically can do challenges where you take on a group of enemies to get extra experience. And you can also scout new encounters with gold if you want to grind up your team for some supports or experience. And that is the main difference with Birthright. Other than that, the objectives are a lot more a lot simpler here. They're similar to Awakening, where pretty much every map is kill all the enemies or kill the boss. You have like the Dragon Veins have more of an impact in Birthright, I found, which I actually forgot to talk about this for Conquest. But you have like these Dragon Veins that you can find on the maps, and they can kind of give you different effects. Like if you activate one with your main character Corrin, or one of the other characters that can activate Dragon Veins, you might recover HP in a certain spot of the map, or damage certain enemies on the map. It differs on the map, and I found there were far more of them in Birthright, and they were more effective in general. They added more to your strategies, I found, but the mission objectives themselves were definitely a lot simpler. And I gotta say, I think I do prefer the more varied objectives of Conquest. But at the same time, I also prefer the fact that you can actually grind if you want to. I would love kind of like a nice mix between the two games, which I think Revelations might actually be like that, where you have the varied mission objectives, but you can grind whenever you want to. And like I said before, Birthright's very easy compared to Conquest. Like, there was only one map that I thought was challenging. It's one where like Camilla keeps activating these Dragon Veins to basically attack your whole party, and there's a bunch of like canals, and it's kind of maze-like, the environment, and kind of tricky to figure out where your characters are going to go. That map was actually really challenging. Chapter 23, I think that was. But the rest of it was easy, and the final mission, compared to the final mission in Conquest, is a joke. Now, I did play on casual normal. I should have maybe bumped it up to hard, or maybe actually even put on permadeath. It would have been more challenging that way. Maybe Revelations, I'll finally try permadeath one more time. But yeah, the objectives are quite simple. You're probably either going to like that, or you're not going to like that too much. Like, it didn't bother me so much, but after playing Conquest, it was kind of like, okay, yeah. I mean, there are some maps that have different kind of gimmicks. There's one with like lava. You have to activate these like orb things to kind of create a path through like a volcano area. You have like terrain effects and things like that in some of the maps. So I actually think the maps are better designed than they are in Fire Emblem Awakening, for instance. But they're not to the level of Conquest. But Birthright was purposely designed this way, of course. Other than that, I mean, it plays the same as Conquest, basically. That there's new classes. There's a couple new classes I noticed in Birthright that weren't in Conquest, obviously, because you have a whole different cast of characters for each game. The ending to the story, like with Conquest, is fairly satisfying. I know we're moving into story here again, but it's one of those things where, I actually wouldn't... Unless you're a hardcore Fire Emblem fan, and most people are probably going to want to play both games, but I would say you can play one of these games and still have a satisfying story. I don't actually think you need to play both games, unless you just really want to. You could get away with... you could have a good experience by just buying one of these games, I really feel. Yeah, other than that, in terms of gameplay and story, there's not much to say, again, because I've covered everything kind of more in detail in the Conquest review. Not going to talk about the visuals or the audio. It's generally the same. The soundtrack, I think there's a couple new songs, but it's kind of, I heard a lot of the same songs as well. Amazing soundtrack. So yeah, it's Birthright's definitely a much more casual experience. Definitely. It's a nice contrast to Conquest, I think, and I'm kind of glad I played Conquest first. I know most people probably went with Birthright first, but I'm not too disappointed that I went with Birthright second. Although I did start obviously feeling some burnout towards the end, but yeah, that's Fire Emblem Birthright. When you combine them both as Fire Emblem Fates, it's a really great package. I definitely think that it's made some great improvements over Awakening as far as gameplay goes, even though the story in Birthright especially I don't think is actually as good as Awakening's. So yeah, a really enjoyable game. Now we just gotta wait till Revelations and see if that has a satisfying story or conclusion, because from what I understand, you don't side with any family in that one. I think that might be a shorter game too. I don't know. We'll have to, I guess, wait and see. But I wouldn't expect a review for that, at least for a couple months, because yeah, I'm no more Fire Emblem for a while. I'm a little tired of it at the moment. But still both really good games. You can't go wrong with picking up both or either of them, really. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.